Hey everybody, I'm back again with Alejandro Salcedo, and today we're going to make somewhat of a different episode where I know we usually analyze certain stocks and companies when we talk about the investing on my YouTube channel. And today we wanted to honor the legacy of Charlie Munger, one of the best investors of all time and the best friend of Warren Buffett. And Charlie Munger accomplished so much, even though he may have seemed like he was someone in the background sometimes because Warren Buffett was usually in the limelight. So Alejandro and I would like to recount some of our favorite stories about Charlie and our favorite quotes. So with that, Alejandro, what's one of your favorite things about Charlie Munger?
Hello, Michelle. Hello, everybody. Again, is an honor. It's very sad this loss, but again, as he will tell us, I mean, the only thing we can do is remember him and how he always used to say, "You can be friends with the dead." So that's what we're trying to do. And I just want to start with that. How they will always start their meetings. Buffett will say, "We work together because he can see and I can hear," and that was pretty funny how they started the shareholder meeting. And again, as Michelle said, we wanted to talk about obviously his investing principles, but at the same time, obviously his philosophy of life, which for a lot of people that don't know, I mean, is even bigger. And I'm gonna go ahead and tell another quick story before I pass back to you. And is a I don't know if you remember that time he was with he was being interviewed, and so the interviewer asked him, "Hey, Charlie, so how is your family? You have 8 kids, right?" And he was 93 at the moment. And again, he being 93, the interviewer said, "Charlie, you have 8 kids, right?" He said, "So far."
Wow, that's funny. Yeah, like as far as yeah, I mean that's kind of hilarious that he would say it like that. Like, and he was always making kind of funny short remarks. Like he was so witty and able to communicate in such a pithy way. And I think that's what pithy means is like you communicate in a brief way, but it gets your point across. And he was brilliant at that. Like he could just say everything summed up in a very simple way. Like Warren Buffett would talk for 10 minutes and Charlie Munger might say like 10 words and like it's the exact point of what what the whole gist of the answer was to shareholder questions at the annual meeting. So I mean Charlie was amazing, and one of the things that I also take from him is he has so much wisdom to share. Like he wanted to be remembered as also being a teacher, similar to Warren Buffett, because he's been known to say the best thing you can do is to help another human being learn. And I think that's a wonderful cause. Like, it he wasn't focused necessarily on, how much material wealth he could accumulate, but how his impact on the world would be. And I think that kind of legacy is why people like Charlie and eventually Warren Buffett will be remembered, like that they passed on such a generous, kind, positive spirit instead of someone who, if they're selfish and they only focus on what they can have, like they have the biggest yachts or the fanciest cars. Like Warren Buffett was and Charlie Munger were never about those things. So it's amazing that Charlie was just like an everyday person. He still lived in the same house in Pasadena that he built 70 years ago, and he was happy with that. Like I'm sure it was a nice house, but these guys being billionaires, they could have easily upgraded to multi-million dollar mansions somewhere if they were really interested in that. But they've just stayed like normal people in their houses for the last 60 or 70 years.
Yeah. And now that you say that, it's funny because I don't know if you remember, but we met at the Buffett house. That was the first time we met each other.
Right.
And yeah, what you say about Charlie being like always trying to pass along his knowledge and all, and it makes me remember how he always would say that if you were successful financially just by picking good stocks, you will have a fail life. So that was very interesting because I mean basically that's that's what most people that don't really know him personally, I mean, not personally, but like about him, would think that he was just thinking about making money. And as you said, I mean, he lived in his house for 70 years, while Buffett has been in his same house for 60 years. And another good story, which I know you know, is like at his last shareholder meeting at the Daily Journal. I asked him, I mean, I've been sending him questions for several years, and I asked him something very interesting, different from most entrepreneurs, that they always tell you, oh, you have to dream really big, and they always telling these stories of how this company, this X company, or how McDonald's just had one store. And Charlie will always say that one of his secrets to a happy life will be having low expectations. And I was fortunate enough that he answered me this. And this is something I think we as human beings need to really think about, like, because he will always say, 100 people can try their best, they can do their best, they can do all the job, they can do everything, but there's only going to be one winner. So if you live in your life like always thinking about being number one or being that top pay, I mean, you're going to be a very unhappy life. So I really take from him this part of having low expectation. That doesn't mean don't work hard, or that doesn't mean just like sit around and just wait stuff to happen. No, no, that's not what he meant. He just
Mhm.
meant do your best, be proud of what you do as a human, work, study, read, but don't expect stuff to happen because of that. Be proud of that process. So even though he was a very capitalistic human mind, he was very stoic in this point of view. So I think through all his books and all that he read, I mean, he was just so much information, concise, as you say, and just so precise and so assertive that to me, I mean, it was amazing because he read everything. I mean, he was like, yeah. So that's a story that I wanted to remember of
Yeah,
him.
and that was awesome that you got to ask him a question at the Daily Journal meeting, and like you were able to get Charlie to answer you. So that was amazing, Alejandro. That like there were so many questions, right? So it's like luck of the draw, how Becky might choose a question from the audience. So that was amazing that Charlie answered you.
Yeah, I agree. I was like, I mean, I was like looking, and I got so excited in my computer when I heard him say that.
Yeah, like he talked directly to you. He
Yeah, basically. I mean,
Yeah, that was amazing. So yeah, I
yeah.
mean, incredible lesson for sure to have low expectations. And I think a similar thing Warren Buffett said some time ago of like when he told university students of like the secret to a happy marriage or something like that is to have no expectations or low expectations so that whatever people expect. Like I think when people expect too much from other people, that's when they get disappointed, and that's when relationship troubles can happen with anybody, whether it's your spouse or your friend. If you are expecting too much from them, it can be, you can have difficulties in the future with people. So yeah, if you just like, to me that seems to say we should stay humble, like we're all not perfect, and we all should work on ourselves and also help other people. So I think it goes hand in hand. By helping other people, you're not expecting them to be anything necessarily. Like you don't, like, even if someone went to university or whatever their education is, you don't just expect them to, oh, you should know how to do whatever thing because you were educated. Like that's just putting too much expectation on some people. Maybe we should just be a little more understanding and not jump to conclusions about other people. So I think that's one of the great lessons, I think, coming from Charlie, is he was both very practical, and everything he made sense in saying. Like it was very straightforward advice, like what's featured in the Poor Charlie's Almanac book and so on.
Yeah, that's such a great book. And with that, I wanna I want to tell the story of how I don't know if you heard this story before, but Warren was worried that Charlie was deaf. So he went to the doctor and he asked, "Oh, so doctor, I think my friend Charlie is deaf. He cannot hear me." And but I mean, obviously, it's not fun to tell somebody, "Oh man, you're not here." So the doctor told Buffett to talk to him, and next time that he was in a room with him, he will talk to him far away and start getting closer. So next time they're in the room, I mean, they're like 20 yards apart, and Warren says, Charlie, should we invest in BYD or something like that? I don't remember the company. And nothing, not a flicker. He gets five yards closer, and Charlie, should we invest in X company? Nothing, not a flicker. One more time, he gets closer. Now he's like almost 7 yards apart. Charlie, should we invest in this company? And Charlie answers, for the third time, Warren, yes.
Ah, so
So
it was more like Buffett who was the
yeah,
hard of
he
hearing.
he was the one who cannot hear. So it was uh, such a funny story.
Uh,
And and with that one, yeah, let me tell another one which is very funny about how I mean they were talking of how like directors at companies, and this is obviously investing, but again at the same time it's real. And he's like how they always complain about how directors are not really independent because a lot of the directors in the different companies get paid $250,000, and that's probably 50 or sometimes even more than 50% of the net income. So they always say how they are looking for chihuahuas and no Dobermans, like as directors. And Buffett goes, "Oh, I hope I'm not offending my friends by saying this because obviously he has a lot of friends directors." And Charlie answers, "You're offending the dogs."
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, like it's so yeah, so true how, it these are like serious subjects, but they add like some humor to it that, it's like we all get it, what's going on.
No, absolutely. I mean, I just think not only they're serious subjects, but they're like, I mean, to me, what one thing that worries me a lot is like they there's not many people that had the power and the microphone for some reason to say all these things that are true. But I mean, they're very hard to go against. Like for example, like all these directors or all these compensation consultants that just, I mean, they don't really bring anything to the party, but at the same time, I mean, they are charging companies, and you know how that is the circle there.
Hmm.
And there's not many people with the power of them talking. I mean, they're not talking bad. I mean, they don't mean it in a bad way, but they're just telling the truth.
Yeah. Well, and I mean it is a big issue, I think, where more and more the CEO pay is way beyond what a normal CEO often is paid, like from 50 years ago. Like it's been so much pay inflation because you get those compensation consultants and they say, "Oh, well, a similar CEO at a competitor company is making this, so you should make this with all the stock options and whatever." So Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger represent, the most fair, compared to other places where there's also a different priority. Like for Warren Buffett, Berkshire Hathaway was his baby. He's not trying to extract the most wealth out of it. Like he has a vested interest to keep it going. So he's not trying to maximize his own yearly salary, whereas some other CEOs that will only be at a company for like 5 or 10 years, they might only want to do what's best for their own pocket and maximize their earnings, and then they leave, and then they don't really care what happens to the company afterward. So yeah, it's a big difference in mindset, like how much you're being a custodian for the future, the future benefit of the people who work for the company and the shareholders and the communities that the companies affect. So Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger have more of this mindset to take care of people instead of screwing them over like it feels like a lot of other company CEOs have done.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just unbelievable, and that reminds me of the story of how Charlie answers to a question about hiring a compensation consultant. He was like, "I'd rather throw a viper inside my shirt than hire a compensation consultant." And
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I heard about that too. That was a funny, yeah, a funny thing he said. Yeah.
yeah, and the other one comes to mind. It was the investment banker that I don't. They did a deal with some company, and the other company hired the investment banker. So I mean, obviously the investment banker comes to Charlie and Warren with a little thing with the projections, and he's like, okay, Mr. Buffett, Mr. Munger, here's what it was paid. I mean, you guys pay. I mean, the other company paid $2 million for this, and Charlie, in his funny tact, he's like, I'll pay you $2 million not to look at that.
Yeah. Yeah,
You
for
know
sure.
how
He's,
he always was like, you know how they don't believe in projections. I mean, they're like,
mhm.
I mean, obviously, when you, like you said, I mean, when you have an interest of, if the deal gets done, you get paid 10x, and if the deal doesn't get done, you get paid 10, you get paid X. I mean, obviously, everything is, I mean, you act with a bias, and it's not like judgmental or anything. It's just like the system. So
Mhm.
how remember how, I mean, when he was a lawyer, he was like, I don't want to spend my whole life trying to get rich by people getting in problems. So that's one of the reasons he, I don't know if you remember how
Yeah.
he quit law because of that.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I mean, yeah, there's so many things we could also say more about that. But another thing I want to mention is how one of Charlie's known phrases that he's often quoted for is, all I want to know is where I'm going to die, so I'll never go there. And he said early on, write your desired obituary and then behave accordingly. So if you think about that, like, I'm sure they thought about what will be my final legacy toward then, like, what do I want to be remembered for? And it's just like kind of a funny way of saying, like, oh, tell me where I'm going to die so I never go there. And maybe like that might be a little morbid a way to think about life, but if you think about what you want people to remember you for, you might change your behaviors accordingly so that you know you can be proud of the life you lived.
Yeah, absolutely. Now that you mentioned that, and I think you always, when you talking several videos about Charlie, how he always says, invert, always invert.
Mm-hmm.
It makes me remind me of this funny story. I don't know if you ever heard about him. They asked him, so Charlie, how do you want to be remembered? And how he always wanted to be invert, always invert. He said, well, I just know I just don't want to be remembered like the guy that used to own the television chain. And he was like, why? I mean, what happened? So when this guy died, everybody went to the cemetery, and it was like full, like there was a bunch of people, and it was like, oh wow, why is this? I mean, why so many people? I mean, and the reason there was so many people at the cemetery, it was because everybody wanted to make sure the guy was dead.
Oh
So
no.
so so after a while, the priest, like, I don't know, at the end of the I mean, of the cemetery, of the sermon, it's the priest goes, and he's like, so anybody wants to say anything about the deceived? So nobody said nothing, and at the end, that the best thing somebody had to say was like, his brother was worst.
Yeah.
So that's a
Oh
funny
man.
story he told one of the shareholder meetings.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I mean, I'm sure people only would have had great things to say about Charlie, those who were able to attend his funeral. Like, unlike that story, right? That's not what you want to have happen. That, like, you led a life and nobody is remembering you or has anything positive to say. It's just amazing how that can guide our decisions in life. And another thing that I love from Charlie is he just didn't care what people thought. Like he just calls it the way he thinks it is. Like he's just such a straight shooter, which I admire tremendously. And like one of the lessons is he said, I think it's much easier to find 5 than it is to find like 100 stocks. He thinks people who argue for all this diversification, he calls it diversification, like it's worse to diversify. And he said he's way more comfortable owning only 2 or 3 stocks. And that's where he thinks he knows something about and where he thinks he can have an advantage. So, like, the point of the story is, people think it's safer to be invested in hundreds or thousands of stocks, but that's only for what Charlie calls the know nothing investor. Like if you don't know anything, then you are forced to just hide in all these various stocks. But if you do know something, like I think I remember Charlie talking about how if you are a business owner in a little town and you own the car dealership and the McDonald's and an apartment complex and one more thing, you've got it made. Like you don't need to own that much more. You already will be very wealthy if you really understand how those businesses work and you can, help them be successful where you are.
Yeah, that is a great lesson that I also think a lot about. And just to add a little, and it's just like you can know so much more the fewer companies you know, because if you have 100 companies in your portfolio, I mean, what can you know about 100 companies? But if you have only 5, you can know the ins and outs of everything, and you can just be checking. And as you said, I mean, I also agree that it's way more important to know what you're doing. And yeah, so that was such a great lesson. And with that, I want to go to the story about I don't know if to that 2 hijackers that caught Charlie and Warren. So they got them in the airplane, and so they were gonna kill them supposedly, and it was Warren and Charlie there. So one of the hijackers asked, so what is your last wish? And you know how Charlie will always talk about all the great things about Costco. So Charlie was like, "Oh, I want to tell for the last time the virtues of Costco," right? And then the hijacker asks Warren, "So Warren, what is your like wish? What is your last wish? Shoot me first. Shoot me first." He was so tired of how Charlie will always talk about Costco and all the great things about it. It was
Yeah,
so funny. I mean, yeah.
yeah, I mean, and I mean, it's funny, but it's incredible, like how, I mean, Charlie was so right. I mean, to this day, Costco is one of the best warehouse clubs in the country, and I was even there last night, and I had a hot dog. Like, I actually never had the $1.50 hot dog. Like, normally, other people I know get it, but I never got it before, so I just tried it for the first time, and it was pretty good. I was impressed that it was a good size hot dog, and like I enjoyed the experience of trying that at Costco last night.
Oh, that's pretty funny. That is the first time I get it a lot. I mean, I fight myself not to get it so much because it's such a good value.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I know. And I mean, Costco is incredible, and what I'm sure the lessons that Charlie taught to the management over there, because he was on the board of directors of that company, was, a lot of things that just make sense, like to keep cost low. Like if Costco has a competitive advantage because they are a low cost producer of high quality goods, and others maybe don't always beat that model, like Sam's Club or BJ's. They might get close, but they might not be quite on the same level as Costco is. So it's almost seems unfair. Like anything that Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger touch will, like, be made better than others that are competing with them. So yeah, Costco is amazing. And one of my favorite things that Charlie said during a recent Daily Journal annual meeting was he was bragging about getting a $7 flannel shirt. He's like, I have this flannel shirt and it's great. And I mean, it's just amazing how even in his late 90s, he's bragging about getting deals, and he doesn't even have to worry about that. He's got plenty of money to get deals, but he just was always frugal throughout his life.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that, and I think he talked about that. I mean, he just wanted to set the example because he didn't want the little mongers to just assumed that everything was given to them and then lost the path and all that he built. I mean, he want them to like keep it up and be respectful with the money. And now that you mentioned that, it reminds me that I think they used to like travel in bus because of that same reason. I mean, just because they were rich, that doesn't mean they will have to hire their own airplane. They will travel in bus. So it was all these life lessons that he will just keep showing to his relatives and to us as investors. That, I mean, I don't think there's going to be many human beings like him, honestly.
Oh yeah, and I mean, there's amazing how like Charlie said a lot of things that should be common sense. Like he the kinds of people that will probably succeed in life, he says, avoid sloth and unreliability. So if you can be a reliable person who's not lazy, you're more likely to do better. And also he said that you know, one of the ways to get ahead is by avoiding being stupid. So if you can consistently be not stupid instead of, you know, maybe a lot of people on Wall Street are always trying to outsmart people and they're trying to be very intelligent. But Charlie said that, you know, you have more of an advantage by avoiding dumb mistakes. Like, so if you don't make stupid mistakes, you make better decisions, you can be more successful than the smartest people around.
Yeah, and that goes to your point that you always say, invert, always invert. So like, it's not really looking at, oh, I'm gonna make this, so how much can I lose? Oh, I'm gonna do this, or what's the worst thing that can happen? Which, I mean, always is very different from how people think, but it makes so much sense. I mean, and that book, Poor Charlie's Almanac, as you say, is such a good read. I mean, it's just amazing that yeah, I mean, it's such a good read. I'm very happy that Peter Kaufman, I think is the author, was able to get and compile all that information, because it's so useful. It's a very recommended read for the people out there.
Yeah, for sure. And another component I think featured in that book was elements of a speech Charlie gave over the years, and it's been expanded upon with the principles he talked about of the human psychology of misjudgment, or the psychology of human misjudgment, something like that. So with if you listen to, like, there's 25 ideas there about how humans commit misjudgments. So if you study all those things and you can avoid like wrongly judging things, like, and I think that has to do with decision making, then you will tend to have more success. So it's part of that book, but you can also learn about it separately. Like, there's online transcripts and videos about Charlie talking about those principles.
Yeah, absolutely. Now that you mentioned that, is such a useful for, I mean, not even for only investing, it's so useful for life, because it talks about the principle. One of the principles I remember a lot, and I'm going to tell really quick because yeah, we don't have that much time, I think, uh, is the principle about how you comparing, because how, for example, when you are going to buy a house, the realtor, they use the trick of comparison, and they just take you to this huge overpriced house, and you're like, oh wow, but it's like overpriced. But then they take you to a moderately like in price house. So after seeing something so overpriced and so good, you go with that one, instead of like just going right away to the first house that that the real estate agent wants to sell you. So it is a very powerful speech. I totally agree with you, Michelle.
Uh-huh.
Yes, you have
Yeah.
to.
Yeah, if people want to, you know, gain as much wisdom from Charlie, I mean, I think that's one of the best things we can do is, like, if we don't have to make the mistakes ourselves and we can learn from other people's mistakes, especially the ones that Charlie talked about him witnessing people do over the years, I mean, we can be in a better position, right? Like, it's way less painful if we don't have to make those same mistakes.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's way less painful and cheaper too, you know.
Yeah, and another thing I liked about you know, Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger's relationship. Oh, there's two things. Is, you know, one of the things that Warren Buffett remembers fondly of Charlie is he said they never fight. They never got into an argument in their many decades of friendship. And I think that's really incredible. Like, you can have different opinions, but if you can find a way to see eye to eye with someone and not get into like a heated argument and blame someone like for whatever they think, like that, we can have better relationships with them. And then in Warren Buffett's annual letter from like that came out this year, he said that Charlie has been one of his best decision clinchers for decades, and he said, Warren, think more about it. You're smart and I'm right. So Charlie always found a way to get Warren to see the light, you know, like Charlie was just wise, and like maybe Warren took a little bit to come around, but like Charlie had faith in Warren that he would, you know, realize what's the right path.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the time is about up. It's been a pleasure, Michelle. I think we could talk for hours and hours and hours about their stories, but I mean,
Yeah, and there's so much. Yeah, I mean, we highly encourage everybody to learn more about Charlie Munger. He's one of my favorite teachers. Like I get so much out of him. So yeah, we'll continue being friends with Charlie.
absolutely, Michelle. It's a pleasure.
All right, take care, Alejandro. Thanks for talking with me.
Bye.
Bye.